Mary. Okay, there we go. Thanks, Mary. So good to see all of you. I attended the discussion group last Monday. I think there were only 6 people, but I think we had pretty good time. Those that were there. So you're welcome to join. I'll try to come. I don't see any reason why not. I'll try to come again on Monday. And if it turns out there's a better day for some of you or a better time, maybe we can even have another discussion group, but we went over some interesting things. So hi, Jennifer. Hi, everyone. We're going to begin with some prayers. So that's traditional in the Tibetan tradition, and in the most of all the Buddhist traditions, there are various chantings that go on at the beginning, but the main thing is that your mental state. That's why after we say the written, we speak these prayers, we recite these prayers, we try to do a little meditation on the meaning of it. So, Mary Ellen, would you like to put up the prayer? Okay, so just for familiarity, we're going to chant twice in Tibetan and then, or say once in English and then twice in Tibetan. I go for refuge until I'm enlightened to the Buddha, Dharma, and the Supreme Assembly. Through the collections I create, through listening to the Dharma, may I become a Buddha in order to benefit all migrators. Sangye Churang Suki Chognam La Jangchu Badu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chunen Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Sho Sangye Churang Suki Chognam La Jangchu Badu Dagni Kapsu Chi Dagi Chunen Gipe Sognam Ki Drola Penchir Sangye Drupa Sho. When His Holiness the Dalai Lama and other lamas give teachings, usually there's a chant master, we call the umze, who will, the Dalai Lama will join in. He might say the first verse, and then the umze continues with a loud voice. So then the next request to turn the wheel of Dharma. Can you move? Oh, short mandala. Sashi Poki. Juxing me tog tram ri rab ling shi ni degen padi sange shindu mikte uwargi drokunam dakshing la chupasho. Jesu Lama Tampa Kenam Ki Chi Chukun Kala Genze Chuzinte Chitar Sampe Duje Zinmala Sabge Chuki Charpa Abdu so idam guru rana mandalakam niryatayami. So often when the Dalai Lama teaches, other lamas teach, they do the long mandala. We haven't done in our class that very often. It's very good practice to visualize. If you have, say, a mandala set, a base and some barley or rice that you place in the various positions, Mount Meru, the 4 continents, the subcontinents, and then the main things above those continents, not necessarily related with those continents, like the precious wheel and the precious jewel and the precious queen and so forth. Those are called the 7 special possessions of a Chakravartin emperor. And then you have the offering goddesses and the sun and the moon and so forth. And if you do that long mandala, you create, because of the precision and the detail, you're imagining offering things that you may not imagine that you have now, right? Precious queen or precious wheel or precious elephant, but creating virtuous karma, say making one prostration to the Buddha, you create the karma to become a Chakravartin emperor who has those possessions. You create the karma to become a Chakravartin emperor as many times as there are atoms under your bodies. That's why people make long prostrations. So there's a sense of that, giving all of your roots of virtue to the Buddhas in this form, visualized as a pure realm and so forth. Okay. So we're going to begin, we'll do a little meditation. Relax your body. Yeah. Paul reminded me to twist. I saw him twisting his body. They're good. Relax your body, relax your mind, which is a little more difficult. Give up any worries. Be aware of your breathing. Once you're aware, keep it in mind with a mental factor mindfulness to the exclusion of everything else, recognizing when you're breathing in and when you're breathing out. Said by watching your breath for 21 cycles, be mindful of it. You can partially eliminate the disturbing thoughts in your mind. If you're really adept, maybe 7 cycles is enough. So now bring your mental consciousness to the 4. Instead of watching the breathing, watch the contents of your mind. And immediately within that, try to recall the clear light nature, the conventional clear light nature of the mind. Our developmental Buddha nature, as opposed to the naturally abiding nature of the mind, which is the emptiness of the mind. This is just this lack of obstruction to thoughts entering and leaving, those thoughts being adventitious, transitory, arising due to causes and conditions. There is no existent quality that you cannot develop. Of course, you can't develop non-existent qualities, something you make up. There's no existing fault in your mind that can't be eliminated. This developmental lineage, this clear light, conventional clear light nature of the mind is something we always have with us. And just turning our mind to it can bring us some hope, some solace when things are crazy. Remembering that the ability to recognize this right now, the fact that we can become Buddha, is due to having this auspicious moment, this life of leisure and endowment, which has come about through our own karmic effort in previous lives, practicing morality and generosity and so forth, making prayers, not necessarily as a Buddhist. And that this auspicious moment we have right now, that we're experiencing, this life, can be used just to accumulate wealth or fame, power, pleasure of the senses, the 8 worldly concerns in general. Or it can be used to direct ourselves toward liberation or enlightenment. We could, in this very lifetime, achieve liberation with this life of leisure and endowment, or we could achieve enlightenment if we have the right collection of merits from the past. Even in this short lifetime, through the practice of highest yoga tantra, we could collect everything that we need and achieve enlightenment in one lifetime. Probably not by keeping a 9 to 5 job at the same time. Who knows? Why would we aim to go beyond liberation, to get out of cyclic existence for ourselves? Why would we aim to achieve enlightenment? Because if we turn our attention to others, away from our selfish thought of, self-centered thought of only my own welfare, everyone else that we can see, at least they're acting, to all intents and purposes, they are in cyclic existence also. I say that because some of them may be bodhisattvas or Buddhas who are not, but they're mimicking that state for us to develop compassion or other virtuous states of mind. All of these beings have been our mother numberless times in the past, have been depthlessly kind over and over again, just as much as our present mother, or if you have a bad experience with mother, as you can imagine, the perfect mother we've had numberless times. They're all, in addition, they're all equal with us in wanting to be free of suffering, wanting to have happiness. They're equal in having the Buddha nature. seeing the shortcomings of working for our own welfare alone, that it's the doorway to all suffering, for the cause of undesired suffering, and that cherishing others is the doorway to all good qualities, the Arya path, Buddhahood, and so forth. Think all of these living beings right now need a refuge protector to repay their kindness that is a much more noble gift that we can give them, to be the refuge protector, to become a Buddha, to guide them, to alleviate their suffering, not just this lifetime and individual circumstances with medical help or social services or even operations and so forth, but to give them the requisites to find their happiness in numberless lives in the future until they achieve Buddhahood. To do that, we ourselves have to become a Buddha. We have to accumulate the two collections, the collection of merit, virtuous karma, and the collection of wisdom, understanding of the non-inherent existence of all phenomena. To do that, we have to know how to practice those, how to accumulate merit, how to meditate on emptiness, which is the subject matter of the text that we're studying by Lama Tsong Khapa, the illumination of the intent, illumination of the intention, which is the Lama Tsong Khapa's commentary on Chandrakirti's Madhyamaka, which in turn is a commentary on Nagarjuna's fundamental wisdom, which in turn is a commentary on Buddha's Prajnaparamita Sutras, Buddha's teachings on emptiness. Chandrakirti's text is adorned with also details about the method side, not only the wisdom side. So it's a worthy object of study and of listening to the teachings of. So think, I'm going to listen today, contemplate the meaning of the words so that I can get a clear understanding. And when a clear understanding does arise, meditate. That is, keep your mind single-pointedly on that for some time to leave an imprint in your mind in order to accumulate the two collections, in order to become a Buddha, for the sake of leading sentient beings who are depthlessly kind, who've been our mother numberless times, out of samsara into stable, everlasting happiness. I'm going to listen to the teachings in order to become a Buddha for the sake of all mother sentient beings. Even those you dislike, particularly those you dislike. Thank you. Okay. So good to see you again. A couple of people are off. Diana Weddington is a CPA, and this is their audit season. I guess I'm not sure if it's auditing because it's the tax season. She doesn't do tax returns, she does audits, so she's going to be listening to the teaching on the recording later. And oh, David's here. Okay. They're getting ready to do some other things. So before we begin, any questions that have been vexing you? Mikhail, are you okay? You sometimes have some good questions. Mikhail?
I think so far so good.
Okay.
Let's see.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Okay. Jennifer? You okay? Sarvash? Okay. Benjamin, we haven't seen you in a while. Have you had any? Do you have any questions? No. Okay. Okay. I don't see anyone itching to raise their hand. So we're going to begin. And although I advised you to put the page number down, when I tried to put it down on my digital copy, I didn't put it down. So what's the page number of where we're going to start here in the written and the printed copy?
Page 89.
Page 89.
And Jeffrey's book, it's 162.
89 and 162. Okay, good. And for those of you who didn't, because I didn't do well, who have the digital copy, you can search for the words again, comma, the Concealing the Concentrations Sutra. That'll take you to this page. Again, comma, the Concealing, you know how to spell concealing, Concealing, the Concentrations Sutra. Okay, so that's where we were. We got up to there last time, but just as a little bit of a reminder, about a page or so before that, we get to the subsection, the sources that substantiate this point. So that is the sutra, other Sutra Mahayana and Hinayana sutras that substantiate that the hearers and solitary realizers realize emptiness. So we talked about this before. There was a source in the Mahayana sutras, the discourse for stira adhyasya, adasya. So the Thupten Jinpa has stira, which is one word for, like I was saying before, that's kind of the Sanskrit version of Tara, like in Theravada, right? Tara means elder. Like when I visited Borobudur many years ago, maybe 20 years ago, there was another monk there, a Theravada monk, and I told him at that time I'd been ordained for 20 years. So he said, "Oh, you are a Mahatera." So usually if someone has been ordained as a bhikshu for 10 years, they're called a Tera, or in Sanskrit, we'd say Stivira. Stira. I think it's Stivira. Anyway, Tera. And if you're 20 years, you're a Mahatera. I'm not sure, 30 years, 40 years, I've been ordained maybe 40 years or something. I mean, Maha, or some other Tera, great elder. So there are other words for elder, and some of the other translators have noticed that in the Sanskrit editions, they don't say stir. It's a text that was requested by Adhyasya, and it's quoted in Chandrakirti's clearly worded, or clear words, the Prasana Pada. For example, when the musical spell of a magician is heard, and I reminded you that that's probably not the correct interpretation. It's the word rolmo that Thupten Jinpa is translated as musical spell of a magician. It's talking about just the demonstration. So that rolmo can mean not just musical instrument, but actually just the playing, the playing out of this magical spell. Some seeing a woman, so emanated woman, conjured by the magician, experience lustful thoughts. Their mind, driven by desire, they become self-conscious among their companions and feeling embarrassed, they leave their seat and walk away. Who knows what that means? Maybe they've had some sexual arousal, or their skin they get flushed or something like that. They have some other manifestation of that, and they're embarrassed, so they walk away. Having thus gone away, if they now engage in contemplating that woman, that they, the imaginary woman, the illusory woman, as unattractive, transient, dissatisfying, and empty, and devoid of selfhood, the antidotes to desire, right? Those are among the 16 aspects of the Four Noble Truths, but they can be instituted as individual antidotes, like Ron was asking before class, antidotes to attachment and so forth. These are some of those antidotes. Then the Buddha says, "O child of the lineage, Ulaputra, what would you think of this? Is that person proceeding in the right manner, or is he proceeding in a distorted way?" And I'm not sure. I think Manjushri, I'm not sure who this is. Manjushri, maybe. Blessed One, Bhagavan. That's how they translate Bhagavan, right? Bhagavan is the title that, epithet that the monks would refer to the Buddha. Bhagavan. Bhagavan, when there is no such woman, this is just an illusion, right? The striving of that person who engages in contemplating her as unattractive, transient, means impermanent, right? Dissatisfying and empty and devoid of selfhood is a distortion. It's not really the best way to go about it. The Blessed One, the Bhagavan says, "Here too, O child of the lineage, you should view those monks and nuns, as well as some male and female lay disciples who engage in contemplation of phenomena that are in reality unborn and unoriginated," right? They're actually, what that means is they're not born inherently. When we talk about the various, in the 6th chapter, when we talk about it, the main proof that Nagarjuna begins with in his fundamental wisdom is that phenomena are not inherently generated, or not inherently born, or not inherently originated. That refers to impermanent phenomena, but then it can be expanded to permanent phenomena also, because permanent phenomena are not subject to causes and conditions. Okay, so that person, where was I? The contemplation of phenomena that are unborn and unoriginated, that's how their actual state is. They are in reality unborn and unoriginated. If you contemplate them as unattractive, as transient, as dissatisfying, and as empty and devoid of selfhood, they are also likewise. That means that they are meditating in a distorted way, in a wrong way. I do not say that these foolish people are practicing the path, for they should be described as proceeding with distortion. Right? We talked about that last time. When you've thought about that, Ida, did you have any doubts about that? What the point of that is?
I don't think so, because it's not a correct analysis. The woman is an illusory person.
Right.
It doesn't exist.
Well, isn't that illusory person also impermanent? I mean, if a real person is impermanent, isn't that illusory person also impermanent?
I don't know. I'm not sure.
Anna, what do you think? Anna LaCroix. Is that you're saying that's practicing proceeding with distortion, but isn't that right? Aren't they dissatisfying? Aren't they impermanent? Empty and devoid of selfhood, just like a real woman would be?
I think we said that there's a problem with the illusory, but I'm still wondering about that. I can understand the impermanent part.
Uh-huh.
So I think for me, I'm just also not absolutely certain.
Oh, okay. Mary, you had your hand up for a second. Mary Ellen?
Yeah, I was thinking she's a mental image, so she would be a permanent.
No, she's not a mental image. She's appearing to your eye consciousness
Okay.
through a spell. What do you think, Stephen?
Well, thank you, Venerable George. Well, I'm hearing what other people are saying. How I'm kind of interpreting it, this example, is that, well, the illusory woman is non-existent, doesn't exist at all.
Right.
Whereas
Well, yeah, right. The appearance of an illusory woman, the appearance of illusory woman exists, but there is no illusory woman. Right, exactly.
Whereas the counterexample you gave to test our wisdom is that, well, an actually existing person is being misapprehended by our consciousness as inherently existing. So that's a different category of mistake.
Well, this is also being misapprehended as inherently existent. Diana Abramo has her hand up.
Is the point here something like all of those negations are correct within the context of an illusion, but since the entire thing is an illusion, that to cut it at the root is more of Occam's razor, and that's sort of what we are doing when we're continuing to refocus on emptiness of persons. That there's no point in sort of arguing about things that went on within a dream because it's a dream.
Yeah, yeah. Say, for instance, yeah, right. You're right. So, for instance, if you argue about whether the son of the barren woman, which you are somehow confused about, is making right livelihood, or whether they are dark complexion or light complexion, it's like you say, it's fruitless because they don't exist at all. It's just like arguing about the qualities of the son of a barren woman. Remember that example, right? The son of a barren woman. Does the son of a barren woman exist? Well, no, generally, but I mean, you could argue linguistically, maybe she had in vitro fertilization or something like that. She had a son, but we're just talking about in general, if a person is barren, that means that the point is that they can't bear children. Okay. So here the Lama Tsongkhapa continued, here a parallel is drawn between someone grasping at an illusory woman as an actual woman and contemplating her in impermanence. So they're grasping at her as being real and contemplating her impermanence and so on the one hand, and making an analogy with that, with someone grasping at the aggregates to be real and contemplating their being impermanent and so on the other. So that's the reason for this example, that if the Hinayana arhats or the Hinayana practitioners were to not have realized emptiness, and they were to be contemplating the aggregates as inherently existent, and then on that basis to meditate on the aggregates as being impermanent and dissatisfying and selfless and so forth, that would be the same kind of senselessness, because they don't inherently exist. You're thinking of them as being inherently existent, as really findable out there. So that's not the right way to meditate on impermanence. If they were to understand that they're lacking inherent existence, or if they were in that in-between state between knowing that they're not inherently existent and grasping at them as inherently existent. Remember, there are three kinds of states of mind. You can see something, or you can experience something and grasp at it as being inherently existent, be dominated by that. On the other hand, if you've realized emptiness, you can recognize it as an illusion, that it doesn't exist that way. Or you can have a state of mind in which you're not grasping at it as inherently existent, nor realizing it as empty of inherent existence. Just, like the example I gave you, like the blacksmith, you're asking the blacksmith where their horse is, and they say, oh, it's over there. At that point, the blacksmith's not thinking that's an inherently existent horse. It's not thinking that it's a non-inherently existent horse. It's just conventional state of mind. We talked about that in the course on the practice of emptiness. Then Lama Tsongkhapa continues, to draw an analogy between these two examples, the illusory woman, and which is not really there, and grasping at the aggregates as inherently existent, whereas they're not really inherently existent at all. To draw an analogy between the two requires instances where one takes real aggregates as one's object of focus, believing that they are inherently existent, when he says real here, I think, and contemplates their impermanence and so on. Since this is a distorted state of mind, erroneous in relation to its apprehended object, its content is, of course, not established by valid cognition. Making sense? Richard's nodding. Oh, Palmo, Venerable Palmo's here also. Okay. Don, how are you doing? Making sense?
Yes, thank you, Jim.
Toby?
Yes, thank you, Venerable.
Okay. Just checking. Okay. However, continuing in the text, however, within the mental continuum of a person who has not yet eradicated the apprehended object of grasping at true existence, okay, someone who's not realized emptiness yet, they haven't eradicated the apprehended object of grasping at true existence, means they haven't realized emptiness. There can still be numerous instances where that person takes the aggregates as his object without qualifying them as either true or false. Not truly existent or inherently existent, not as empty of inherent existence. So that's just what I was just talking about. There's that intermediate kind of position, like the blacksmith points to his horse or something like that. And on that basis, that person who takes the object of the aggregates without qualifying them as either inherently existent or not inherently existent, on that basis establishes their impermanence and so on by means of valid cognition, again, without qualifying these as either true or false. Just conventional. When one meditates upon these facts as well, similarly, stages of the path, realizing impermanence and so forth, will arise in their mental continuum, unqualified in the manner described above. So that won't be distorted, as the Buddha was pointing out to his interlocutor in the sutra there. Okay, so this is where that's where we finished last time. So again, the Concealing the Concentration Sutra quoted in the Prasanapada. So interesting that sutra has a Sanskrit name, and the Tibetans take it pretty standardly as Pakpa Samten Pekyu. Hopkins translates it as Sutra on the Miserliness of One in Trance. That means the one in dhyana, right? Miserliness of one in trance. Jimpa translates it as we have here, Concealing the Concentrations Sutra. In the translation by Matthew Neal of the Sutra Samuchaya, where it's also quoted, he translates it as Sutra on Seizing the Object of Contemplation. So there's no clear translation of the name of that sutra. Maybe you would have to read it in its entirety or a good portion of it to figure out what is being meant by that title. But anyway, that sutra says, Manjushri, so this is Buddha talking to Manjushri, as they do not see the noble truths perfectly as they are. I was talking about, people who have not correctly understood the meaning of emptiness. As they do not see the noble truths perfectly as they are, sentient beings whose minds have become erroneous through these four distortions will not transcend this imperfect cycle of existence. Or as Jeffrey translates, Manjushri, sentient beings whose mind are mistaken due to four errors, through not seeing the noble truths correctly as they are in reality, do not pass beyond this unreal cyclic existence, this unreal samsara. So the text continues. To this, Manjushri responds with the appeal, "O Bhagavan, pray reveal to us what is that, if perceived, prevents sentient beings from transcending samsara," right? I'm adding, say, blessed one is Bhagavan, cyclic existence is samsara. Thus, in response to the Buddhist statement that it is through not understanding perfectly the four truths as they are that sentient beings fail to transcend cyclic existence, Manjushri asks, do tell us what point and in what manner of perceiving it prevents sentient beings from transcending cyclic existence. We're all together? Making sense? Miguel, what do you have?
Yeah, just for what is meant by the four distortions or errors.
So I think that's coming. Let's see.
Okay.
The Buddha replies that if one meditates on impermanence and so on, with the thought, I will transcend cyclic existence. Jimpa puts I in italics here, but I think cyclic existence is also. And I will attain nirvana, conceptualizing these in terms of clinging to them as real. Then the thoughts, I have understood suffering. I have eliminated its origins. I have actualized cessation, and I have cultivated the path will arise. And he or she will come to think, I have become an arhat. So what's talking about? What are these things he's saying? I have understood suffering. I have eliminated its origins. I've actualized cessation, and I have cultivated the path. What's that referring to? Paul, that's easier, right?
Sorry, George, I meant to say that again.
So here it says, if one meditates on impermanence and so on, with the thoughts, I will transcend cyclic existence and I will attain nirvana, conceptualizing these in terms of clinging to them as real, then the thoughts, I have understood suffering. Where does that thought come about? That's if you've realized the first noble truth, right? I have, what does it say? I have understood suffering. That's what the Buddha said. You should understand suffering. I've understood. You should eliminate its origins, the origin of suffering. Second noble truth, the origin of suffering is klesha and karma, right? I have actualized cessation. The third noble truth is the truth of cessation. You know, the things, I've done this, I've actualized cessation, and I have cultivated the path in order to do that. Usually cessation comes about because of cultivating the path. The fourth noble truth is the truth of the path, right? So this is just talking about the four noble truths. Someone, these thoughts can arise if you think that you have, the Buddha replies that if one meditates on impermanence and so on with the thoughts, I will transcend cyclic existence, grasping at the I and cyclic existence as truly existent, and I will attain nirvana, conceptualizing, holding the I as inherently existent and nirvana as inherently existent. Then the thoughts, when you actualize the path and so forth, will arise, and that person will come to think, I, inherently existent I, have become an inherently existent arhat. You won't think inherently existent, but because you haven't, if you haven't overcome these misconceptions, that's essentially what you're thinking. I will become an arhat. I have become an arhat. So when that person succeeds in temporarily eliminating manifest afflictions, as discussed earlier, say by meditating on the lack of a self-supporting, substantially existent person, right? They've caused the manifest afflictions, manifest klesha, delusions, to be subdued. Here it says eliminating them. Temporarily eliminating them. That just means subduing them, right? As discussed earlier, the thought will arise in that person that all contaminations have now ceased because they have some kind of, they're not affected by anger and attachment and so forth right now. They haven't eliminated the seeds of anger, attachment, and ignorance, so forth, but these things can't blossom. They can't manifest in your mind. They're presently temporarily subdued or eliminated, the manifestations. However, at the time of their death, when that person sees that they're going to take a rebirth after all, they will engender doubt toward the Buddha. Someone who's followed this Hinayana path and recognizes at the time of death that they're going to take rebirth, they can think, wow, the Buddha misled me, And as a consequence of this damaging thought, the sutra states they will be born in the great hells. If you notice me changing the pronouns, it's just to be more gender inclusive, right? This refers, of course, to only a few among those who are abiding on such a path. It does not apply to all of them. Next. Okay, so are we doing okay? Jennifer, is it making sense?
Yeah, but I did have a question about that.
Yeah.
So regarding, being born in hell, is it because they generate anger towards the Buddha? Because I would have think that, if like there are different types of doubt, and then if and doubt could be healthy. So I'm just curious about the
right. It's not so much doubt. How did I say here? When he sees that he's going to take rebirth at all, he will engender doubt toward the Buddha. Let me see how Jeffrey translates. I don't have the Tibetan of that right on my screen right now. And I will thereby they doubt Buddha, and this fault causes them to fall into a great hell. So it's not like the kind of doubt that we have. Remember that when we talked about doubt in mind and mental factors, Jennifer, do you remember what the three kinds of doubt are?
I mean, I think there's doubt leaning towards the correct view, the
Right.
doubt leaning towards the incorrect view, and then the doubt in between that.
Right.
Yeah.
So if you develop doubt about reincarnation and so forth, that's equally placed. Maybe reincarnation exists, but I'm not sure. That's not a negative. If you develop doubt leaning in the right direction, maybe impermanence exists, or say maybe enlightenment exists or something exists, but I'm not sure. That's not negative. It's the doubt that thinks, yeah, maybe the Buddha was right, but it looks like he's wrong. That is negative, right? So the doubt leaning in the wrong direction, I think, is what's being implied here. You know, he got it wrong. So it's better to stay away from such thoughts, right? This is emotionally charged at the time of death because the whole person's rationale for practicing and their life and everything is now, as they see they're going to be reborn in hell with some clairvoyance at the time of death, some intimation of where they're going to be reborn. That's more emotionally charged, says maybe some strong anger can arise because of that.
I see. Yes, I'm just trying to understand the karmic cause of the rebirth in the hell, and I'm wondering if it's the actual doubt, leaning towards the incorrect view, or is it that being, potentially manifest as anger and heresy, and yeah, just trying to get really precise.
Yeah. I think both. I think just the doubt itself leaning in the wrong direction, that's emotionally charged at that point. Really certain,
I see.
That I think the Buddha's deceived me. It's not certain, right? Because then it wouldn't be a doubt. It's not a certain state of mind, but it's one that still has possibly he was teaching me, but it looks like he's wrong. Okay.
Thank you. And I'm sorry, just quick follow-up. Do you think that's why Lama Tsongkhapa says this applies to a few of them? Because maybe those that are more emotionally charged, may compel the rebirth in the hell, or yeah.
Right. I think that's what it is. So you could take it to mean, it seems to be referring to those who see at their time of death that they're going to take rebirth after all. It's not talking about those who have actually eliminated or don't have that doubt. This is referring to those who see that they're going to take rebirth, and some of them may just take the onus on themselves, and maybe I've meditated incorrectly or something.
Yeah. Yeah, or curiosity or something like, oh, that's interesting.
Of course, you think that you're going to take rebirth, or especially in hell after you've done all this work, maybe more than, joyous, laughing curiosity. But anyway, so next, the text continues. Next, when Manjushri inquires, how does one realize the Four Noble Truths? He is following up on what was stated earlier, that one must realize the Four Truths, the Noble Truths, perfectly as they are. Okay, so this is very important. So again, Buddha says, O Manjushri, he who sees all mental formations as unborn thoroughly recognizes suffering. I have the note here. So Jeffrey translates it, Manjushri, he who sees all products as not produced. In a text by the Dalai Lama, the Thupten Chudran, our FPM teacher, translated together, the same quotation comes, Manjushri, he who sees all conditioned things are unborn. So this is talking about, when you talk about, remember I mentioned the beginning of fundamental wisdom, the first proof of emptiness that Nagarjuna gives is that phenomena are not inherently born, are not inherently generated. This is referring to impermanent phenomena. So that's why it says here, Jimpa says, mental formations, but that's not exactly right. It's more, the word is products, all things that are produced, that are impermanent, in other words. If you realize that they are not produced inherently, that they are not inherently born and so forth, they will thoroughly recognize suffering. He who sees, or they who see all things as not coming into being, has eliminated all origins. Or as Jeffrey says, he who sees all phenomena as sourceless, because remember the second noble truth is the source of suffering, right? The origin of suffering. So he who sees all phenomena as without origin has abandoned the sources, has abandoned the origin of suffering. He who sees them as utterly passed beyond sorrow has actualized cessation. I'm reading Jeffrey's. He who sees all phenomena as totally unproduced has cultivated the path. Okay, so Jimpa's translation. Manjushri, he who sees all should be products as unborn thoroughly recognizes suffering. He who sees all things is not coming into being, not having an origin, has eliminated all its origins. He who sees all phenomena as permanently or utterly transcending sorrow has actualized cessation. He who sees all phenomena as utterly unborn has cultivated the path. So in that regard, there's a note there. It says it's cited in the Prasanapada. There, Chandrakirti gives the name of the sutra as demonstrating all phenomena to be non-entering sutra, a sutra not found in the Kangyur. That means in the Tibetan Kangyur. So, yeah, okay. In this way, the sutra explains how, through this path, free of appropriation, one transcends sorrow. Or as Jeffrey says, the Buddha says that through this path, one passes beyond sorrow. One achieves nirvana without taking rebirth, right? That's what's meant by free of appropriation, not taking rebirth. This presents very clearly how it is that seeing the four truths as devoid of intrinsic existence, it is that frees one from cyclic existence. So it's not just seeing the Four Noble Truths, but seeing that they are not inherently existent. Or as Jeffrey says, it shows that one cannot be freed from cyclic existence through a path unless that path is devoid of the conception of true existence. And telephone call up has their hand up. 1775.
Hi, that's me, Venerable George. It's Julie Caldwell.
Hi, Julie.
I was driving, so yeah. I have a thought. I wanted
Be
to
careful
ask
while you're driving.
I'm not driving. I just reached my destination.
Oh, okay, good.
But I
good,
haven't gone on Zoom video yet.
Good, good.
My question that I've been wanting to ask while I was driving is that I believe you translated a sutra called the Vajracutter Sutra.
That's right.
And in that sutra, there was one thing that stuck with me, and maybe this relates to this here, because you were talking about, beings that recognize themselves as an arhat. And I remember, I believe it's in that sutra, that it talks about anyone who sees themselves as an arhat is not an arhat, or what? They do these contradictions back and forth.
Right.
And when you're talking about so like if an image of a woman or whatever, or you're even like, I've had images of my teachers, such as like Geshe Zopa, come to me since he's passed into nirvana, right? And I know that that's an illusory thing. And when I actually grasp on it, because I want to grasp it so much, it hurts. I get tears in my eyes.
Right, right.
And then I let go, because I know this is just a phenomena, and aren't I blessed? You know, this little eye that's getting to witness this is blessed, and I just let it go, and I'm thankful or appreciative, and then that feeling of tears go away, and my openness of breathing comes back. And so I was just wondering, I know this is a really weird way of asking, does this fit? But I don't know how to ask the questions right. So this is the example that is coming up for me in relationship to what you're talking about. And is what I'm thinking, or even though I can't express it.
Right. No, you're right. In fact, on the very next page of the illumination of the intent, it says the diamond cutter. Jimpa translates it as diamond cutter. That's what also Jeffrey. It's not called the diamond cutter. It's called the Vajra cutter. It's called the Diamond Sutra in Chinese. They don't put the word cutter in it. That's their own. A lot of the sutras had Chinese titles that became sort of adhered to them. I think diamond cutter has been associated with Geshe Michael Roach, who's kind of was in the diamond business and wanted to do. And anyway, who knows? So the Vajra Cutter Sutra 2 clearly states this same point about Shravaka's realizing emptiness. So the Buddha asks, Subhuti. So Subhuti was one of the bodhisattvas, right? Subhuti, what do you think of this? Does a stream enterer have the thought, I, and Jimpa has the I in what do you call it, italics, have attained the fruit of stream entry? Actually, fruit of stream entry should also be in italics. Does he think, I, inherently existent I, have achieved inherently existent stream entry? That state? Subhuti says, oh, blessed one, Bhagavan, he does not. Why is this so? That the Buddha is asking. Blessed one, Bhagavan, this is so because he does not enter anywhere. Hence, he is called stream enterer. So that's coming the next page. Okay, so you were right about that. There are several times in the Vajracutter Sutra, Vajracetaka. Cetaka means to cut. Okay, it doesn't explain in the sutra why it's called Vajracetaka. In Kamalashila's commentary to the Vajracutter, the Vajracetaka, he mentions, why is it called Vajra? Because the sutra is big at the beginning, small in the middle, big at the end, like a Vajra, right? I don't have a Vajra in front of me right here. So there's no indication that it's talking about a diamond. A diamond is not big in the beginning, small in the middle, but the Vajra, you know what the Vajra is. You can't see me if you're on your telephone because I'm holding up one hand. There's a bulbous thing at one side, and then there's a little thing in the middle, and then there's a big thing on the other side of Vajra. That was the weapon that Indra, I think it was Indra who created in order to fight off some demons or something like that. Indestructible, made from the chest bones of some rishi who had died and blessed his body to become indestructible. So that's come to mean in Hinduism, the Vedic religions, and in Buddhism to be something indestructible. Okay, so this coming. Okay, so this presents very clearly how it is that seeing the four truths is devoid of intrinsic existence that frees one from cyclic existence, and how a path undivorced from grasping a true existence. That means who doesn't have grasping a true existence. I think this is undivorced. Tenzindang madelwe lam gikorwe mi nidawe shindu. Jeffrey says it shows that one cannot be freed from psychic existence through a path unless it is devoid of the conception of true existence. You can't get out by any path unless it's devoid of grasping the true existence. Are we okay? Are we okay? Okay. So then the text continues. It therefore demonstrates how the path of the four truths and their 16 characteristics, 16 aspects, such as impermanence alone, cannot eliminate the seeds of afflictions, and how, in order to eliminate these, one must meditate on the truth of the way things really are on the basis of realizing it. So all of these different statements. Now we're getting quotations of the Mahayana Sutras, like the Sutra of the miserliness of one in trance and so forth, in the Vajracutter. They're all showing that unless you have realized emptiness, say the emptiness of the Four Noble Truths, simply meditating on impermanence and so forth while grasping at things as being inherently existent, that will not lead to nirvana. Okay. Now, if one fails to distinguish these points properly, one might hold that Shravakas possess merely the path meditating upon the 16 characteristics, such as impermanence, and assert that Arya Shravakas and Shravaka Arhats, right? Two kinds of Shravakas. When you realize emptiness, you become an Arya, then you meditate on that for a long time, eventually you become an Arhat, are not genuine Aryas and genuine Arhats. In this way, one might accumulate the grave negative karma of denigrating the Aryas. Thupten Jinpa says might. Hopkins says would. It's not like ambiguous. You will accumulate the great negative karma of denigrating the Aryas by saying those who are actually Aryas, Shravaka Aryas and Shravaka Arhats, are not. You say, oh no, they're not. So that's a bad thing to do. And if the one who is uttering such things happens to possess the bodhisattva vow, the person who's making that statement will accrue the root infraction as well. A root infraction. What are the, let's see, Tal, Abadi. Is it Tal? Tal? What are the bodhisattva infractions, root infractions,
I'm not sure. Sorry.
So they're different interpretations of what the bodhisattva vows are, right? We talk about root vows and secondary vows or subsidiary vows. So the root vows are such that if you were to break them, you would no longer, your bodhisattva vow would not be operating, and you have to take the vow again, which is easy to do. It's not as though like all is lost. You just have to take the vow again. You can do that by visualizing the Buddha and bodhisattvas in front and saying, the pursuing the ritual and again, aiming to achieve enlightenment for the sake of all sentient beings. So in the compendium of training, the Siksha Samuchaya, that is, remember that's Shantideva's text in addition to the Bodhisattva Charyavatara that's telling all the scriptural resources for Bodhisattva Charyavatara. So in the Compendium of Trainings, for example, describes this act as a root infraction. So the quotation from the Compendium of Training is, the vehicle of trainees does not eliminate attachment and so on, quote unquote, saying that one holds and causes others to hold the same. Or as Hopkins says, holding the vehicle of learners, the Shravakayana, does not abandon desire and so forth, and causing others to believe the same. So that's one of the root infractions in some enumerations of the Bodhisattva vows. Are all enumerations of the Bodhisattva vows the same? Do you know, Venerable Tendrin? You're muted. There you go.
It depends on the, like the Chinese Bodhisattva vows. I don't think say this, so it just depends.
Right.
And of course, the wording is different. The translation terms are different.
Right. Translations are different, but there are in various sources, if you look at what in the Tibetan tradition, at least in the Gelugpa, certainly, and probably some of the others, generally said to be the root infractions, they are actually compiled from 3 or more different sutras where some infractions were said. So, like for instance, is it the Japanese, maybe the Chinese tradition? What is the Bodhisattva? What is the Bodhisattva vow, Venerable? What do you think?
Well, they're just different. I took those vows, and
do you remember what
the sutra was? No, I didn't have.
Not the sutra. What the vow was?
No, I know in the Tibetan tradition, isn't it that you don't denigrate the Hinayanas, that you.
That's one thing. Yeah, that's sort of like, that wouldn't necessarily be found in all of the enumeration of the vows. Some of the vows just say, I will, was it maybe in Japanese? I will not attain enlightenment until everyone else is enlightened. That's kind of like one take on the Bodhisattva vow, right? Which is not even the Bodhisattva vow at all, because in order to benefit sense, you want to achieve enlightenment. It's not as like you wait till everyone else is enlightened and then you become enlightened. That's a wrong interpretation. So anyway, the Bodhisattva vows, the enumeration that you see in lists in the FPNT handbooks and so forth is traditionally accepted, but it comes from different sources in the sutras, some of which, Lama Zopa Rinpoche used to say that Khyentse Tsong Rinpoche said, the actual vow is to not have self-cherishing thought. And that any one instant of self-cherishing thought, you've broken the Bodhisattva vow. That's pretty easy to do, right? Self-cherishing thought. So that's sort of like the hardline interpretation. Okay, so in any way, if you were to think that the Shravakas were not actual Aryas, there were no Aryas or Arhats in the Shravaka vehicle, if you were to utter that would be breaking the Bodhisattva vow, according to Shantideva's Siksha Samuchayam. So then it says the Diamond Cutter Sutra, which I would like to state isn't the Chinese don't call it the Diamond Cutter, they just call it the Diamond Sutra. It's actually the Vajracutter Sutra. 2 clearly states this same point about Shravakas realizing emptiness. So I read this before. Subhuti, one of the very famous bodhisattvas, says, what do you think of this? The Buddha says to Subhuti, what do you think of this? Does the stream enterer have the thought, I have attained the fruit of stream entry? emphasizing I and real stream entry? Subhuti replied, Bhagavan, he does not. Bhagavan says, why is this? And Subhuti says, Bhagavan, this is so because he does not enter anywhere. Right? When you talk about stream entry, so you're entering, remember when we talked about the fundamental wisdom, it talks about coming and going. There's no coming and going. There's no inherently entering and so forth. Hence, he is called a stream enterer. So he can be conventionally called a stream enterer because he doesn't inherently enter anything. That's the point. It also says, the Vajracchedika says, Bhagavan, this is Subhuti talking, if the stream enterer were to harbor the thought, I have attained the fruit of stream entry, this in itself would constitute grasping itself, grasping at sentient being, grasping at life force, and grasping at person. Or as Jeffrey translates, if that quotation, if the person were to think, I have attained the fruit of stream enterer, he would be conceiving a self, himself and the fruit attained, Jeffrey puts in parentheses. So it's not just talking about, I, as Jimpa has in the text in italics, that you're grasping to, you're also grasping to the result. He would be conceiving of a self, and in parentheses, of himself and the fruit attained. He would be conceiving a sentient being, a living being, and a person. Oh, Julie's back with us in person. Hi, Julie. Making sense? How are we doing? Doris, Julie has a question.
No, I just pulled up the Bodhisattva vows.
Yeah.
And by ones were from anyways. And so are you talking about number 9, holding a distorted or goodness, how do I say that word, outlook? This means to deny what is true and of value, such as the laws of behavioral cause and effect. Is that the one you're talking?
Probably not. Probably that's some other. There's one that is denigrating the hearer vehicle.
Okay.
Saying, like, we are Mahayana. So, you shouldn't, practitioners of the Hinayana can't achieve arhatship and so forth. Actually, they can, not by utilizing the Hinayana tenet systems of Vaibhashika and Sautrantika. They have to utilize the quotations from the Hinayana sutras that we will be encountering soon, where the Buddha taught, for instance, that form is like a mass of foam and so forth. We're, realizing that not only the person, but the aggregates upon which the person is imputed are also selfless in this more subtle sense. Okay, Sumvansh.
Venerable George, could you elaborate a little bit? So you just said that the stream enterer can talk about stream entry in a conventional sense, but will not be talking about it in an ultimate sense.
Yeah.
So can you, I hear you, right? And I have to pause and then I have to ponder and think and conceptualize, and then, okay, I have a vague sense of what you're talking about. But the stream enterer effectively is not only going to talk about stream entry and, once entry, all right, but all concepts, I guess, right? From what you're saying, all concepts to him or her is going to arise as in a conventional way, but not in an ultimate way.
That's right.
So can you, how, I'm just trying to conceive of how is that, how is that what is a gut level, way to do that, or how does that happen?
Well,
because for somebody just an average person like me, I see swabhava. Once I'm off of these philosophy, I see swabhava everywhere.
yeah. So for those of you who are not, we talked about svabhava before. Svabhava means nature or self-nature. It has different connotations in Buddhism. Generally, Buddhism says there's no svabhava. That means svabhava in the general sense in Madhyamaka, in Prasangika, svabhava refers to true existence, inherent existence, some real nature there. There is no nature, no svabhava from its own side. There's my microphone in front doesn't have a nature of its own that presents itself to me, right? In the end, in fundamental wisdom, Nagarjuna does use the word svabhava to refer to emptiness also. There is a svabhava, nature, but not meaning inherent existence, which is emptiness. So one has to be a little bit careful. In general, it's negative. Like, for instance, when we do our tantric sadhanas, you say, Om Svabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Svabhava Shuddho Aham, right? Om, what is it? Om Svabhava Shuddha. Svabhava Shuddha means free or purified of svabhava. Om Svabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma. All phenomena are free or are empty of svabhava. Om Svabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma. And then it goes on to say, Svabhava Shuddho Aham. Aham means I. And also I, so phenomena, outer phenomena are empty of inherent existence, of svabhava, and I am empty of, or cleansed of, or free of inherent existence. That's what that mantra means that we say at the beginning. Almost all of the tantric practices, even in Kriya Tantra, all start out with that mantra. It's a recognition of the emptiness of oneself and of phenomena, the emptiness of persons and phenomena. Okay. Does it make sense, Sumansh?
Well, my question was how do you get to how does the stream enterer work
So
with
someone who is a
convention?
stream enterer have they realized emptiness directly or not? Stream enterer.
I guess that until you've reached arhatship, you have not realized.
No, that's not right. Ida and Stephen both nodded. They say, so if a stream enterer is defined as a person as soon as you have the first moment of the path of seeing, you've realized emptiness directly, you are called a stream enterer.
Okay, thank you.
You have entered into the stream that leads to arhatship, right? Or to nirvana, whatever you want to say. Or in the case of a bodhisattva, they also say, we don't usually use those same terms for the bodhisattvas, but they can be interpreted that way. So for instance, when we talk about the Aryas, Paul, what do you know the 4 kinds of Aryas?
Well, there's
Stream enterer is one.
I'm sorry?
Stream enterer is one.
Stream enterer is one.
Are you talking about one centerer, non-returner?
I'm asking Paul.
Well, that's what actually that was what I was going to say, because I was thinking more like there's bodhisattva aryas, there's shravaka aryas, there's
no. So
you mean the stream enterer? once returner, non-returner, arhat.
Arhat. So Arhat is an Arya, right? Even though it's way beyond, when you first attain the name Arya, you're just a stream enterer, but then through the path of meditation, you eventually become Arhat. You're still an Arya. Arya means one who has realized emptiness directly. So there's generally said to be 4 kinds of Aryas. That's renowned in the Hinayana path. Whereas, and then they can be elaborated. We talk about the 20 Sangha, because Sangha here means an Arya being, right? When we talk about Sangha, the actual Sangha is someone who is an Arya being. So stream enterers are Sangha, once returners are Sangha, non-returners are Sangha, Arhats are Sangha. Not because they have multiple bodies, like Sangha you think of as community. It means someone who's realized emptiness directly. So those 4 can be elaborated into 20. So they're very famous in the Hinayana tradition. We talk about the 20 Sangha, starting with stream enterer, and then all sorts of variations, slightly more, delusions abandoned, and so forth and so on. So subdivisions of these 4. In the Mahayana, the bodhisattvas don't have those same exact definitions, but Lama Tsongkhapa wrote a text and explained in the Mahayana how those names can be applied to various bodhisattvas, not in the same way as in the Hinayana tradition. Okay, so that's what's meant. So a person who is an actual stream enterer, who's realized that there's no inherently existent self, no inherently existent state of stream entry, they wouldn't say, I am a stream enterer. They might say something like, because there is no stream to enter, I am called a stream enterer, using the word called, meaning sort of like conventionally existent stream enterer. They could, realizing that they are not an inherently existent stream enterer, they're just conventionally existent.
Got it. Thank you.
Yeah. Sean? You have another perplexing question.
Well, I feel like you just touched on it, and I may just have to go back and listen to what you said again. But
okay, why don't you do that?
So would that stream enter a comment? How would that be different from me? Like when in some of these practices or meditations, you dissolve into emptiness.
Yeah, and I am Yamataka, or I am Haruka, or something like that.
Well,
Sri Haruka Aham.
But to say that you dissolve into emptiness when emptiness is a non-affirming negative, is that not the same kind of concept here of like dissolving into emptiness when emptiness is saying it is something that doesn't exist? So how do you dissolve into something that?
So there's a little bit different. So I'm not sure you have to think about it to phrase your question correctly. So when you in Tantra, if you arise as a deity, right? I am Tara. Like in the text that you were mentioning to me earlier, the Haruka text that you're doing, there's actually a phrase, Sri Haruka Aham. Aham. So it just has to do with the Tibetan grammar. You don't say Sri Haruka Aham. When the Shuruka and the Aham are conjoined, you say Sri Haruko Aham. That means I am the glorious Haruka. So that's an enunciation of divine pride, where you recognize yourself as, you have this clear visualization of yourself as the deity. You're no longer thinking of your contaminated aggregates, Sean, Chaffin, beard and so forth, you are actually generally beardless. I can't remember. Does
No, Haruka has an orange beard.
well, so I was just going to ask Paul, but Paul, does he have a little mustache? I don't know. There's some, maybe some.
I have never looked at Haruka Chakrasamvara. I'm sorry.
There's no description of having that kind of facial hair. But anyway, what I'm saying is you've out of emptiness, the ordinary Sean is gone. You know that it doesn't inherently exist. And then practicing taking the three bodies into the path, you arise as Haruka, and you identify with that because that visualization has built into it in your mind, because it's arisen out of emptiness, that it doesn't inherently exist. It's just an appearance. So when you say Shri Haruka Aham, I am Haruka, as opposed to before, remember when I said Om Svabhava Shuddha Sarva Dharma Spavava Shuddho Aham, that Aham comes at the end there. I too am cleansed of Spavava. That means the ordinary sense of self. So this vision of Haruka is already pre-built as not inherently existent. That's one of the special features, that you are identifying with just this appearance, and that is more, you can have that divine pride and use reasonings to say that's more who I am really, because there's no grasping at inherent existence. I am just called Haruka. Okay, leave it. Okay. So then the text continues. So we're talking about stream enterer. If you think I am a stream enterer, have that pride, you're not a stream enterer. Similar statements are found in relation to the remaining three abidings in the fruits as well. So, I am a once returner. I am a non-returner. I am an arhat. So anyone who would have that pride would not actually be those states. If you were to say, I am called a stream enterer because I haven't entered anywhere and so forth and so on, that might be legitimate. That's how a bodhisattva would be thinking. The statement, quote, if one grasps at the one who has attained the stream enterer's ground, is grasping to the self, of the stream enterer, as well as the attained fruit as real, that means as inherently existent or truly existent, and as a result of that engenders the thought, I, he has in italics, have attained stream entry. He should have stream entry in italics also. So the person and the state attained are both conceived of, it was grasped at, it says, if one grasps at the one who has attained the stream enterer's ground, as well as the attained fruit itself, as real, as truly existent, inherently existent, and engenders the thought, I have attained stream entry, this would constitute grasping at his self-existence. Not just his self-existence or her self-existence, but also the self-existence of the status of stream entry. This would constitute grasping at his self-existence. That suggests that the grasping at the true existence of the two, the person as well as the fruit, are forms of grasping at self-existence. It doesn't mean self-existence of persons. And we talk about the self-existence of phenomena also, right? So the grasping that I have attained the fruit, that would be grasping at the self of persons is inherently existent, and grasping that there's a real state that you attain called self stream entry or whatever, that would be grasping at a self, a phenomena, because that's not a person, that's a state, right? That suggests that the grasping at the true existence of the two, the person as well as the fruit, are forms of grasping at self-existence. Of these, the first is a grasping at the self-existence of person, while the second constitutes a grasping at self-existence of phenomena. How are we doing? Rachel, are you there? Oh, I see. I thought that was a picture of you. Yeah. Are you following?
Yes, Venerable George. I think I've also wondered if the statement that you made earlier about how if the stream enterer it is conventionally understood, then they can be called a stream enterer. If it's sort of like, in order to even be conventionally called a stream enterer, they have to realize the lack of inherent existence. Is that a correct thought?
Oh yeah, to be called conventionally a stream enterer, it means they have to have realized emptiness, otherwise they wouldn't be a stream enterer, right? They only become a stream enterer when they've realized emptiness directly, right? So until that, they're not actually even called a stream enterer. They're someone on the path of preparation, maybe the highest mundane dharma, just the last instance when they still have a realization of emptiness that's conceptual, even though it's with calm abiding and penetrative insight, single-pointedly meditating on that, it's still conceptual. Once that conceptuality goes away and they have direct realization of emptiness, they have entered the stream conventionally, and they can be called a stream enter conventionally. That's why many times in the Vajracharaka it says, because there is no this or that, or because a person does not exist, I am called a person, something like that. I am called a person because the person doesn't inherently exist. Sort of the same point, right? Follow? How are we doing? Ron, are you following? No? Okay. Richard, what do you think? You okay? Don? You okay?
Okay.
Okay. No one wants to go out on a limb. Okay. Of these, the first is a grasping at self-existence of person, while the second constitutes a grasping at self-existence of phenomena. So if you're thinking, I am a stream enterer, there's two graspings there, at myself, I, and at stream entry as being inherently existent or self-existent. Text continues, the statement that the stream enterer does not apprehend with the thought, quote, I have attained the fruit, unquote, on the basis of grasping at true existence. He doesn't make that statement on the basis of grasping at true existence, is made from the point of view that it is not the case. This is really interesting here. The grammar right here. So this is made from the point of view that it is not the case that he has not eradicated the object of apprehension of grasping at true existence. Whoa. Talk about, Doris, talk about double negatives. Where's Doris? Okay. So Jeffrey at that point says this. And when I say Jeffrey says, in his translation in Compassionate Tibetan Buddhism of that statement, that an actual stream enterer, he has actual in brackets, that a stream enterer, actual stream enterer, does not conceive the true existence of these, himself or stream entry, and thereby think I have attained the fruit. He doesn't think I have attained the fruit on the basis of grasping at these, refers to his coming to disbelieve the object of the conception of true existence. They have come to disbelieve the object of apprehension or the object of conception of true existence. So he has a note at that point, note 76, which you can find at the end of that book. Don, you had that book, right? On page 253. He says there, Lati Rinpoche reported that some Tibetan scholar considered the text here to be corrupt, which is why I think Thupten Jinpa's double negatives seem so crazy there, and thus removed the negative ma, as has been done in this translation. So Thupten Jinpa has a double negative there. Jeffrey Hopkins' translation says that an actual stream enterer does not conceive the true existence of these and thereby think I have attained the fruit, refers to having come to disbelieve the object of conception of true existence. So that means they've realized that the object of conception of true existence doesn't exist, that it is empty, right? We making sense? Stephen, what do you think? You okay?
I got really confused when I read Illuminating the Intent, and seeing Hopkins' presentation, I think helps a little bit.
Yeah, it helps a lot. And, there may be some way, that these texts, these famous texts, sometimes the block prints got corrupted. When I was translating with Thupten Jampa, who is a translator at Instituto Lama Tsongkhapa, the Madhyamaka Tara, we were using the Peking edition, or Beijing, I guess you'd say now, Peking edition, which had lots of errors. And in the most important places, it had it exactly wrong, as opposed to, like, say, the Derge, which is much more reliable translation. So I almost got the feeling that there were some Maras or something that had gotten into the, gotten a hold of the block print guys and put an extra negative particle somewhere. So what Jeffrey is saying is that this text seems, many Tibetan Lamas think the text is corrupted here. So what Thupten Jinpa is translated sort of accords with that double negative, but it may not be right. We're together? Okay. Okay. This does not suggest, however, continuing at Lama Tsongkhapa's text. This does not suggest, however, that such a person has no innate grasping at all. Right? So he said here, or as Jeffrey said, refers to having come to disbelieve the object of conception of true existence. So that doesn't mean that he's eradicated the conception of true existence. Conception of true existence, conception of inherent existence, grasping at inherent existence are all meaning the same thing. That's subtle ignorance, right? And that has many, many levels. That's not eradicated until the Bodhisattva has reached the 8th bhumi, the pure 8th, 9th, and 10th bhumis, the pure bhumis. Until then, the Bodhisattva still has some grasping to inherent existence, but at this point refers to having come to disbelieve the object of conception of true existence. That's why it doesn't say has eradicated the object of conception of true existence. They won't eradicate all of the conception of true existence. They won't have ceased all of the grasping to true existence or inherent existence until the 8th bhumi. But on the path of seeing, they've come to disbelieve that, so that even though it appears a little part of the mind still is grasping to it, but they don't believe it. because they've seen it directly, right? They've seen emptiness directly. Making sense? Still, some part of their mind might be grasping. So Jinpa's translation says, this does not suggest, however, that such a person has no innate grasping at all. On the basis of explanation offered here, one should understand similar statements related to the subsequent fruits, that is, once returner, non-returner, and arhat. When they have, yeah, okay. Nadine, what do you think? You following?
Yes, I'm following. It's
Okay.
it's great. It's a little bit difficult.
Yeah. It's quite difficult. Yeah. So you have to go back and read. I think if you go back, like, I'm not sure, during the class or after or before the class, Ron had said he found it that listening to the teaching, listening to the recording a second time, or maybe watching the recording after having been in the actual class, made it a little clearer. Remember, I'm not sure if I told it before the recording began, the story I told about Isaac Newton, where I was attributing him reading the wrong text. But anyway, there was one famous text on mathematics that he read. The first time he read it, he said he didn't understand anything. It's kind of like reading a section. I don't understand. And then he went back and started at the beginning. And by the force of having read through and made various connections of words and so forth, the second time he read it, he understood a little. And then he read it again and understand a little bit more. So I think the same thing here applies here. The complicated things, you have to go through it several times. So let me continue. Although some Svatantrika Madhyamaka masters, so are they Prasangikas, Toby? Svatantrika Madhyamaka masters? Toby?
I'm not sure, George.
No, because of Madhyamaka, we talk about, of the Hinayana, we talk about Vaivashika and Sautrantika. And of the Mahayana, we talk about Chittamatra and Madhyamaka. Madhyamaka has two subgroups, generally. Svatantrika Madhyamaka, which is the lower of the two, and Prasangika Madhyamaka, which is the ultimate. So the Svatantrikas are not the highest vision of the Madhyamaka. They still believe that phenomena are inherently existent, but they are not truly existent. But they still have some kind of inherent existence. So the Prasangika criticizes the Svatantrika in that way. So although some Svatantrika Madhyamaka masters interpret the meaning of this diamond cutter or this Vajra cutter citation differently, Prajna Karamati quotes this to substantiate the point that in order to journey to the Bodhi of Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, the Shravaka and Pratika Buddha enlightenment, one must realize emptiness. This is excellent. So who was Prajna Karamati? Does anyone know? Paul knows.
He was the commentator on the Bodhicharyavatara.
Right. I think there were several commentaries. His is the best, and they call it the great commentary. So I'll just read note 172 because I went over to that note 173. What Tsongkhapa, this is in Jinpa's book, note 172. What Tsongkhapa is stating here is this: when the Vajra cutter, the Vajrachetaka, states that the stream enterer does not apprehend with the thought, I have attained the fruit, it is saying that the stream enterer does not relate to their attainment on the basis, so he has a double negative there. So that's, yeah, of does not relate to his attainment on the basis of not having eradicated. So that's, I think that's got the double negative in it again. So I'll leave that. Okay, although some, so Prajnakaramati, the great commentator on Shantideva's Bodhisattva Charivatara, says the same thing, that he substantiates that the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, to achieve their nirvana, their enlightenment, they have to realize emptiness. This is excellent, Lama Tsongkhapa says. These scriptural citations, we gave citations from various Mahayana sutras, right, including the Vajrachetaka. These scriptural citations clearly demonstrate how, if one is divorced from the view of self-suchness, if one lacks, the view of emptiness, one will not become free from samsara, from cyclic existence. And they demonstrate how such a view is essential for gaining freedom from samsara. That Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats are not free from bondage of samsara is something no learned person would assert. He said, to assert that is breaking your bodhisattva vow, because the Buddha himself mentioned, so-and-so Arhat, this person attained Arhat, and this person became Arya, and so forth. They were Hinayana practitioners, but they weren't, to achieve those goals, Arya and Arhat, they had to understand emptiness. So we'll see in the coming section where there are quotations from the Hinayana Sutras, or we say in the Pali Canon Sutta, because they don't pronounce it sutra, right? Sutta, that there are illusions to emptiness. Also, these Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas, many of them attended the Mahayana teachings. You can in the Heart Sutra, Shariputra is asking, right? And in these other sutras, many of the Arhats and Aryas, Hinayana practitioners were present. So they heard these things that kind of infiltrated their thinking. That Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats are not free from the bondage of cyclic existence is something no learned person would assert. They definitely achieve that, nor is such a viewpoint tenable. Therefore, these sutra citations clearly demonstrate that Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas possess the realization that phenomena, not only persons, but also phenomena, lack intrinsic existence. There are many more scriptural sources, such as the Great Mother Sutras and so on. However, fearing excessive length, I have not written about these here. Many quotations from the Great Mother Sutras. What are the Mother Sutras? Hendra, you were about to say?
The Wisdom Sutra, Perfection of Wisdom Sutras.
Yeah.
Prajnaparamita.
Prajnaparamita, called the mother of all the Buddhas, right? The mother of the Buddhas and the hearers and solitary realizers, because like in Indian tradition, one's lineage is dependent upon one's patriarchal lineage, the father, right? So like for instance, the mother of Asanga and Vasubandhu, remember the two famous writers? She had various husbands. I think, do you remember, Paul, which was which? One was royal lineage, maybe it was Asanga, father was king.
Yeah, and then I think Vasubandhu's father was a
Kshatriya, or
was it Kshatriya? Yeah, maybe.
some other. So
Yes.
your lineage is dependent upon your father. So in Buddhism, when we talk about the father, that means the method side. So, the one becomes a Shravaka or Pratika Buddha because your method, not the wisdom side, is renunciation. You become a Bodhisattva because your method side is bodhicitta. But they both share the same mother. The mother of the Shravakas, Pratika Buddhas, and Bodhisattvas is the Prajna Paramita, the perfection of wisdom. They all realize the non-inherent existence of phenomena. Can you hear some tapping in the background? It's my woodpecker pecking at my house. Therefore, these sutras citations clearly demonstrate that Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas possess the realization that phenomena lack intrinsic existence. Fearing excessive length, I have not written about these here. Okay. So that was the first section here about sources in the Mahayana Sutras. Now, sources in the treatises and the Hinayana Sutras. Mikhail, you have a question?
Yeah, sorry to come back to my previous question. Maybe I missed it, but it was about the 4 distortions or 4 errors in the quote, mentioned in the quote.
Yeah. I'm not clear which set of 4 is referring to. It could be the 4 the statements about I have achieved stream entry, I have achieved once returner, I have achieved non-returner, I have achieved arhat, or taking any one of them, distorted thinking that I inherently exist and stream entries inherently exists, and and so forth. It's not exactly clear to me which 4 are being referred to, but in general, it's talking about these misapprehensions that the person who is the attainer and the fruit attained are inherently existent. Okay. So now the sources in the treatises and the Hinayana Sutras. So the treatises means not the Mahayana Sutras, but like Nagarjuna's text, like the Precious Garland, is called a treatise, a shastra, right? Shastras are compositions that were not spoken by the Buddha. Either they're commentaries about the sutras or independent compositions by the great beings closer to the time of the Buddha. So the sources in the treatises or shastras and the Hinayana Sutras. So it begins, the Precious Garland states, this is the text by Nagarjuna, right? So long as there is grasping at the aggregates, it means as long as you conceive the aggregates to be inherently existent, there will be grasping at I. So if you think you could eliminate grasping to I, realize selflessness of person, but still believe that the aggregates are inherently existent, Nagarjuna is saying, no, as long as there is grasping at the aggregates, as long as you believe they to be inherently existent, you'll believe the I to be inherently existent. When there is I grasping, there is karma. When you grasp at the self, your own self, as being inherently existent, the delusions will be present and you will create karma, right? Are the delusions themselves karma? Stephen?
Venerable George, so they are not. Because like in the standard formulation of saying what keeps us in cyclic existence, we say it is karma and klesha. So we distinguish the two.
Right. So klesha, the delusions, like say anger. Does anger create the karma? No, it's the anger is a state of mind that if present in the mind, the mental factor sempa or intention is what moves the mind. It's kind of like this, like the example of you on your precious new inlaid table, wood table. It's nice and glossy and everything. If someone were if Sean, naughty Sean, were to put a handful of sand on your table, and then without you recognizing that sand is there, you take a cloth and you rub it across the table, you see all these scratches due to the sand. The moving of the cloth is like the mental factor intention, right? The sand is like the presence of the delusion, anger or attachment or whatever. Okay, so as long as there is grasping at the aggregates, there is grasping at I. When there is I grasping, there will be delusions, klesha, and therefore there will be karma as a result of the presence of the delusion in the mind while you are thinking, while the mental factor intention is there. And from this, in turn, comes birth. As long as there's grasping at the inherent existence of the aggregates, there'll be grasping at inherent existence of the I. As a result of that, the kleshas will be present. And as a result of the kleshas being present, you will inevitably create karma. And as a result of karma and the grasping, you will be reborn. Make sense, right? Nothing new. With 3 avenues, no beginning, end, or middle, the round of cyclic existence resembles the ring of fire, firebrand. You know what a firebrand is? Nadine, do you know what a firebrand is? What is it?
If you take a torch around and then it creates a circle.
Yeah, the eye doesn't respond instantaneously, so there's a sort of like, it looks like there's a circle of fire, whereas the fire is only at any individual point at a time, but it sort of is just there's an after image in the eye. With 3 avenues and so forth. So where was this? Let's see how Jeffrey translates that. With these 3 pathways in mutual causation, without a beginning, middle, or end, this wheel of cyclic existence turns like the wheel of a firebrand. So what are these 3 avenues that are being referred to here? Does anyone know? Richard.
According to Jimpa at the end, they are afflictions, karma, and birth.
Okay, so these 3 avenues refers to all 12 links, right? So you can divide all the 12 links of dependent origination into 3, he says avenues. What is Jeffrey says pathways. What are say for instance, what are the 3 again?
Afflictions, karma, and birth.
Affliction. So which of the 12 links are afflictions?
I used to have this memorized, and I don't remember it.
Okay, that's okay. That's okay. That's
but I do remember the breakdown.
Okay.
I'm trying to remember.
Nehi, do you know which of the 12 links are afflictions? Stay. Before you unmuted, you were thinking.
Were you asking me, Venerable George?
Yes, yes.
I think ignorance, craving, and grasping.
Right. So of the 12, ignorance is the first link, right? Craving and grasping somewhere near the little past the middle. The next one after that is becoming, right? So klesha, and then Richard, what was the other one?
Karma, birth.
So snehi, as he's provided that. So which of them are karma?
Karma and becoming.
Karma and becoming, right? So when you have craving and grasping on a karmic seed in your mind, that's ripening it. And when that karmic seed, which is karma, has reached the point of being ready to throw a future rebirth, it is given the name becoming, or you could say existence, even though you haven't yet taken that. And then the third avenue, Richard?
Birth.
Yeah, well, it includes all the rest of the 12 ways, not just birth and so forth. Okay, so with the three avenues, no beginning, nor end, nor middle, this round of cyclic existence resembles a ring of fire, thus one causing the other. Beings revolve in this cycle of existence. Since it is not to be found at all in both self and others, even in the three times, grasping at I will come to cease. What does that mean? Since it is not to be found, Jeffrey says, because this wheel is not obtained from self, other, or from both in the present, in the past, present, or future. The conception of I ceases, and thereby action and rebirth cease. So, because this wheel is not, since it is not to be found at all in both self and others, Jeffrey says, because this wheel is not obtained from self, other, or from both. That means this wheel of cyclic existence is not found to be inherently generated from itself, from something other than itself, or from something which is both self and others. This will become clear when we get to the refutation of inherently existent birth or inherently existent generation. Things are not generated from themselves. A sprout is not generated from itself because when it's first produced, if it was generated from itself, it would have existed before itself. If it was generated from itself, it's not generated from something which is inherently different from itself, and it's not generated from something which is both itself and other. So I'll just go a little bit further. The first two lines of this citation indicate how, so long as there is grasping at true existence of the aggregates, that's what you impute the self on, right? The identity view, or the view of the transitory collection, grasping I am, will emerge from it. In doing so, these lines demonstrate how, for the identity view, the view of the transitory collection, to cease entirely in order to have cessation of that, grasping at true existence of the aggregates must cease. If you still grasp at the aggregates as inherently existent, you won't be able to eliminate the grasping at the view of the transitory collection. From this, we can discern that even Shravaka and Pratika Buddha Arhats have completely eliminated the grasping at true existence of the aggregates. Okay, makes sense? Anyone? Okay, that's where we're going to end. That's what we're going to start next time from here. What page are we on here?
93.
What is it?
90.
93.
93.
93. Thank you. So we're going to start, what day is today? The 26th? When's our next class?
Today's the 28th, Venerable George.
28th. So the next class is on the 4th of February, right?
And Venerable, the Hopkins is 166.
Thank you. 166 Hopkins. Okay. This time I'm going to see if I don't erase it. Somehow I erased it last time. 166. Okay. That's
Is
where,
that is the Hopkins version available on the website? I mean, I have it from Geshe Sopa's class, but I was just wondering if that text is still available.
I don't think so. It is copyrighted material. Some people may have a PDF that they can send you, but as it's copyrighted, it's probably best not to put the whole text up on the website. Okay. So how are we doing? Confused enough? Tal? Are you confused?
Hanging in there.
Okay, that's good to hear.
Can I just get the title of the Hopkins text? Because I have the other text that was referenced in the email.
Right.
If somebody could just write it.
It's called Compassion in Tibetan Buddhism.
Thank you.
And that text, Mary Ellen Kirkpatrick is holding up one edition of it. I have an even older edition of it than that. That has maybe a third of the text is some other teachings on compassion, but then these first, the illumination of the intent from the beginning of the text all the way to just before the sixth bhumi, the sixth chapter, is Jeffrey has his translation there. It's not of the entire illumination of the intent, but the first five, and we're still on the first bhumi, so that has a lot there.
Thank you.
Okay. So anyone else have question before we finish up? Snehi. Sister Snehi.
Thank you, Venerable George. I wanted to go back to, on the physical text, page 90, that quote where it says, "Oh Manjushri, he who sees all mental formations as unborn thoroughly recognizes suffering."
Right.
I don't understand that sentence.
So Jeffrey Hopkins translates it as Manjushri, or you could say, "Oh Manjushri, he who sees all products as not produced knows suffering thoroughly." So when we talk about the Four Noble Truths, the first truth is suffering, the second is the origin of suffering, and so forth. That's what it's talking about, these Four Noble Truths, how you realize it. So if you know that products, that is compounded phenomena, such as suffering is a product, right? It comes about because of causes and conditions. It has its origins and so forth, and its experience, the result, and so forth. So if you realize that phenomena are not inherently produced, because products or compounded phenomena, impermanent phenomena all have an origin. They're produced from causes and conditions. So you might think that they are inherently produced, that a seed gives rise, let's say a karmic seed gives rise to a suffering inherently. Whereas Nagarjuna shows that in order to prove that impermanent things are not inherently existent, because impermanent things all have a production, they all arise from causes and conditions. He shows that production or birth, however you want to say it, generation is not inherently existent, because things are not inherently inherently produced from themselves. They are not inherently produced from something which is other than themselves. They are not inherently produced from both self and other, and they are not produced without a cause. You don't even have to put the word inherently produced there. They're not produced without a cause. So that's what's being meant here.
Now I understand.
Jimpa's, because he says mental formations, it's not clear that he means, products there. Okay.
Thank you. I follow now.
Okay. Doris, how are you? You okay? Where's Doris? She disappeared there. Yeah.
Well, you know me, my mind went in a knot over that
Double
section,
negative.
but I did understand it last night.
Okay, so the double negative one, look at Jeffrey Hopkins' translation, much more clear. Jennifer.
Yes, thank you, Venerable George. I just had more of a applied practice question that's sort of related to Julie's comment, where, you have a guru, and based on my limited understanding, I still perceive of myself as inherently existent. I still perceive as the guru as inherently existent. But, if one practices devotion, one can have a lot of positive mind states come up. And that can be to me, very like seductive. Like you just stay there and you just want to stay there and you want to get close to this guru, but not really,
Right.
understand emptiness. And I'm wondering if you might have any suggestions for that, devotion without the wisdom.
Right. So when you create, if you conceive of the guru as having qualities and, never making mistakes and so forth and so on, you may accrue some virtuous karma, but if you're grasping at that as being inherently existent qualities and that person is inherently existent, that's what's called contaminated virtue. Right? I can't remember. There's Jim. So when we talk about virtue, virtuous karma is not, what we want to abandon also is contaminated virtue, because contaminated virtue is the cause of being born in cyclic existence also. Right? So in the practice of guru devotion or in the practice of generosity, morality, patience, and so forth, you want to recognize all of these practices and the interactions within them. Let's say in generosity, I, the donor, or the person who's practicing generosity, do not inherently exist. The recipient of my generosity does not inherently exist. The process of giving does not inherently exist. You can break up this triad in different ways. You can talk about the gift and the recipient or other things, but none of these inherently exist. Otherwise, if you were grasping at any of them as being inherently existent, you're creating contaminated virtue, which is a cause of being born in cyclic existence. Even if you don't have any karma to be born in the lower realms, you're creating the cause to be born as a human. Right now, that doesn't seem so bad. At the beginning, we want to, before we understand about emptiness, we want to we give to the beggars, or to the poor and so forth. And we actually have some satisfaction. I, grasping that I have given that poor beggar that inherently existent beggar. We don't use the words inherently existent, but we're grasping at it. That real $5 bill, or that real 50 cents, or that real cup of coffee, or something like that. So eventually the Bodhisattva wants to eliminate that contaminated virtue and to meditate on the emptiness of the three spheres in all of their actions, in all of the Bodhisattva perfections have to be conjoined with the perfection of wisdom that realizes that they're not there. So your question mainly about, guru devotion, to think that although that's good, I'm creating some virtue, conceiving of the Dalai Lama as inherently perfect, and maybe feeling some inner satisfaction that I have this virtuous mind, and that I'm accruing some inherently existent karma. That's contaminated karma, and a bodhisattva would try to tweak that so that you're no longer conceiving of the guru as inherently existent, nor your state of mind or yourself as being inherently existent who's practicing guru devotion, or the karmic seeds that you're creating. It said that attending to the guru creates all this virtuous karma and so forth and so on. Okay, so it's to tweak that is, you start from that virtuous karma, and then you try to eliminate the grasping at inherent existence of all the elements involved.
Yes, and I guess, aside from just formal sit-down study of emptiness, if I'm just going about my day trying to practice that, would you recommend to try to just even mentally sort of say, oh, it's inherent existence?
Well, in order to integrate in order to tweak it so that you're not grasping at inherent existence, you have to understand about emptiness. So whatever understanding of emptiness that you have, like say, for instance, when we do dedication, we say dedicate in the emptiness of the three spheres, right? I take the three spheres as being, let's say the merits, you could say the merits that I'm dedicating. We think of them as being somehow inherently existent. So meditate that the merits or the virtuous karma does not inherently exist, and that the goal dedicated to my eventual achievement of enlightenment doesn't inherently exist. So even the Buddhas do not inherently exist. The Dalai Lama does not inherently exist. Buddha Shakyamuni does not exist inherently. And the process of dedication doesn't inherently exist. It's just a name we give to a process, trying to join these merits with that goal. You can't find dedication anywhere. So it takes some time to be able to apply emptiness to these three spheres, or to any of the bodhisattva activities, which is, remember when we said that the bodhisattvas have infinite avenues, infinite reasonings. So they understand, that karma is not inherently existent for some reasoning. They might use a different reasoning to show that the goal dedicated to my eventual Buddhahood doesn't inherently exist. They use a different reasoning about the process, like coming and going, right? The process of dedicating. So that takes an agility of mind and a familiarity with emptiness using different reasonings.
Great. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Okay. How are we doing? Are we okay? So was it Mary Ellen put up the dedication? Mary Ellen still here? There we go.
George?
Yes.
I just wanted to mention that there still seems to be one Compassion Tibetan Buddhism left at ABE Books.
At Abe Books, ABE.
ABE.com. ABEbooks.com. They have one left there, it says.
Yeah, so that's good to know. Also, I think sometimes you can find them used, although nowadays, I don't know, it's kind of out of print. It would be nice to have that in print again. Thanks for that, Don.
Yeah, this one is used as well.
Okay, they had a used edition. Okay. So, Mary Ellen, could you put up the dedication? Gewadi Nyurdudan Lama Sange Drugyurne Roa Chik Yang Malupa E Sala Kupasho Jangchub Semcho Rimpoche Make Panam Ke Gyurchik Keba Nyampa Mebayang Gune Gong Tu Pelbasho. And then long life prayers. You, Lama Zopa, who uphold the Shakyamuni's moral code, serving as the bountiful bearer of all, sustaining, preserving, and spreading Lama Tsongkhapa Manjunath's victorious doctrine, masterfully accomplishing magnificent prayers, honoring the triple gem, savior of myself and others, your disciples, please, please live long. And to all our other gurus, eyes, you've become eyes for me to view all the infinite scriptures. You are the supreme gateway for the fortunate who are traveling to liberation, engaging with skillful means, moved by love and compassion. All illuminating spiritual friends, please live a long and stable life. So, naughty as I am, I've gone well over again, so we won't do any more. I hope to see you again next week. Keep an eye on the Shantideva Center page and the Facebook page. If you're on the Facebook page, I know some of you are not. I may post some more articles for this coming week. Try to read ahead, go back and try to see the various reasonings why the Shravakas and Pratika Buddhas realize emptiness and why it's conceivable, especially next time when we're talking about the citations from the Hinayana scriptures. So very, very interesting. So there'll be a lot of that. So hope to see you next week. Take care.
Thank you, Venerable George.